I want to talk about Bernie Sanders, who is still, despite South Carolina, the odds-on favorite to win the Democratic nomination. Sanders says that his proposals are not radical at all, pointing again and again to countries in Northern Europe, such as Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, as examples of the kind of economic system he wants to bring to America. But is he right about these countries? Take billionaires. Sanders has been very clear on the topic. Billionaires should not exist, he says. But Sweden and Norway both have more billionaires per capita than the United States. Moreover, inheritance taxes in Sweden and Norway are 0, and in Denmark just 15%. America's estate tax is 40%. By the way, all the data I'm going to cite here come from the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation or the OECD. Sanders' vision of Scandinavian countries seems to be stuck in the 1960s and 70s, a period when those countries were indeed pioneers in creating a social market economy. In Sweden, government spending as a percentage of GDP doubled from the 1960s to the 1980s. But as the Swedish commentator Johan Norberg points out, this experiment in Sanders-style democratic socialism tanked the Swedish economy. Between 1970 and 1995, he notes, Sweden did not create a single net new job in the private sector. In 1991, a free market Prime Minister, Carl Bildt, initiated a series of reforms to kickstart the economy. By the mid-2000s, Sweden had cut the size of its government by a third and emerged from its long economic slump. Versions of this problem and these market reforms took place all over Northern Europe, creating what is now called the flex security model, combining flexible labor markets with a strong and generous safety net. The first part of the model is key, ensuring employers have the flexibility to hire and fire workers easily without excessive regulation or litigation. In addition, these countries have to stay extremely open, erecting no barriers to free trade to gain access to markets abroad and keep their local companies competitive. Now, it's true, these countries have a very generous safety net, and in order to fund it, they have high taxes. What is often not pointed out, however, is that in order to raise enough revenue to pay for things like universal health care, these taxes fall disproportionately on the poor, middle, and upper middle class. Denmark has one of the highest top income tax rates in the OECD, 55.9%. But that rate is applied to anyone making 1.3 times the average national income. In the US, this would mean any income over $65,000 would be taxed at a rate of 55.9%. And the biggest hit to the poor and middle classes in Northern Europe comes because they, like everyone, pay a national sales tax of about 25%, much higher than the average US sales tax of 7%. These countries raise more than 20% of their revenue this way, compared to only 8% of tax revenue in the US. One final statistic. A 2008 OECD report found that the top 10% in the United States pay 45% of all income taxes, while the top 10% in Denmark pay 26%, in Sweden 27%. This basic point is worth underlining because the American left seems largely unaware of it, and it has only become more true over the last decade. The United States has a significantly more progressive tax code than Europe. In other words, bringing the economic system of Denmark, Sweden, and Norway to the United States would mean embracing more flexible labor markets, light regulations, and a deeper commitment to free trade. It would mean a much more generous set of social benefits to be paid for by taxes on the middle class and poor. If Bernie Sanders embraced all that, it would be radical indeed.